Psychology is a scientific discipline that relies on the scientific method in order to address questions about behavior, thinking, and emotion. In this video, I'm just going to summarize some of the general steps that are involved in the scientific method. We use them in psychology, and they're used in pretty much any other scientific discipline. So the first step to any kind of research is, of course, coming up with a question. Coming up with some kind of interesting research question that you want to investigate. Now, you may get this question or this area of interest by looking at previous theory in a particular area, observations that you've experienced in your day-to-day life, things you've seen in the world around you may provide motivation to test out a certain idea, or just your belief system. All of these different influences can impact the kinds of questions that we ask and the kinds of questions that we research as a society. Once we have our question, we then want to form a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is just a fancy word for a prediction. We want to make a specific prediction or a set of predictions about how we expect events or phenomena to work or interact. So we want to reframe our research question in a way that makes it testable and that we can use research steps in order to either show support for that idea or possibly disprove that idea. The next step is to actually take that prediction and hypothesis and test it. Now, there are a variety of ways to test a research hypothesis. We could do it in the lab, we could do it out in the community or in the real world. We could do it online through surveys. There's all sorts of ways to test research hypotheses. And in this chapter, you're going to learn about some different techniques we have for observing, measuring behavior. Once we collect our data, we're going to draw conclusions. We're going to use statistical techniques in order to decide whether or not our hypothesis was supported by the data. Maybe the results support the hypothesis and we can be more confident that it's valid. But perhaps the results don't support our hypothesis. Maybe we have to go back and fine-tune the way we're thinking about our prediction and whatever phenomena we're looking at. So let's look at an example here. So let's think of a research question that could be something of interest. In class, we posed the idea that social media use may have an impact on our anxiety and depression. So perhaps you're interested in how social media is impacting the mental health of young people. Well, we could form a hypothesis based on previous research that more time spent using social media, things like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, is associated with poorer mental health, more symptoms of anxiety, more symptoms of depression. So the more time one spends on these social media outlets, the more symptoms of anxiety and depression we expect, given that hypothesis. Now, that hypothesis may be correct or incorrect. It is possible that more social media use has a positive impact on mental health. This is the whole reason of doing the study. We're going to let the data speak for themselves. Now we're going to go ahead and gather evidence. We may test this idea using survey research. We may use some kind of experimental setup to test this prediction. And again, you want to be familiar with the various ways of testing research predictions that you're learning about in this chapter. So maybe I run some kind of experiment where I expose a group of people to social media for 2 weeks and I assess their anxiety and their depression. And then for the next 2 weeks, I pull them off of social media to see if there's any drop in their anxiety and depression. That would be an example of an experiment. And I could use the results to draw a conclusion. Okay, it looks like when we pulled that group of individuals off of social media that their anxiety and depressive symptoms reduced, or maybe they went up. Either way, we'd be able to make some kind of comparison there. So this is just an overview of the steps of the scientific method. You would be using these steps to investigate any kind of question you have in the sciences. Psychology is not an exception, and you should be familiar with these steps. I'll see you in the next video.